my own record, today I did 86 push-ups, so it's going to be a great day. Are you ready? Are you ready to get this party sorted? Most of you know this guest. You know him very, very well. And he's got a beautiful, wonderful bio. He's the author of a number of books, author of a number of different research reports and things, including his phenomenal book, Psychoacademic Holocaust, the Special Education and ADHD Wars Against Black Boys. He has been a guest here on LIB Radio. Join me as we welcome our special guest back to LIB Radio, your brother, our brother, Dr. Umar Johnson, Aquaba, brother, Dr. Umar.
Aquaba, brother T. Thanks for having me on the show. Peace and blessings to the entire Los Angeles community.
It's a pleasure to be with you. I'm actually broadcasting from Las Vegas. You're going to be coming to Los Angeles here real soon. We'll talk about this incredible travel schedule of yours that you've been on for some time. But, Brother Umar, you're in Philadelphia, I believe. We're connecting with you today. How are things going with you, Philadelphia? And, of course, you could start off with a weather report.
Philadelphia is a little chilly. It's a little chilly. We had some light snow a couple of days ago. The snow is gone. It's a little chilly, but it's interesting, Kitty, because sometimes it'll be warm where you don't need a jacket, and then 30 minutes later you need a heavy winter coat. But it's definitely wintertime up here in the Northeast.
No, you grew up in Philadelphia, so I guess wind chill factor, you're no stranger to that thing they call wind chill factor.
True, but I'm also a Leo child, so being born in the summertime, August the 21st, I prefer the summer any day over the winter. And although I've been here for 40 summers, or 40 winters rather, I still am not used to the cold.
True. Hey, you know how we got black in the first place, brother.
Yes, sir.
Tell me what's been going on in your world, and I know you've had a tremendously busy travel schedule for several years now. Wow, you almost look like a rock star out there, brother.
It's been a blessing. You know, it's been a blessing. This year, I had an opportunity to go to Central Europe. I was invited to speak to the brothers and sisters out in Austria, hometown of Adolf Hitler. And I don't say that with pride, but I had a chance to go there, look at some of the history of Vienna, visited some of the unique historical places there that were historical not only for black folks or Europeans, but also as it relates to Adolf Hitler's rise to prominence. A lot of good energy out there. It's amazing because there's African people wherever you go, even in places where you don't think you're going to find them. So Austria, that was the first time for me, and I'll be looking to go back there. Just came off of a month-long tour of South Africa this past October. Johannesburg, Cape Town, Eastern Cape, Durban, Pretoria, Soweto, all over. This is the second time I've done it. We've made it an annual thing, so I'll be looking forward to my third annual national tour of South Africa next October, so that was great. I was invited to be the keynote speaker for the Marcus Garvey celebration hosted by IRI FM out of Ocho Rios, which coincidentally took place on my Earth Day, Sunday, August the 21st, 2016. That was a very, very, very powerful program. Got an opportunity to visit a lot of my Rastafari brothers in Jamaica who I hadn't had a chance to see since I keynoted National Heroes Month at the University of the West Indies in 2011, I think that was. And I spent my first visit, I had my first visit to the Turks and Caicos Islands. I never even heard of Turks and Caicos Islands until I got the invitation, but I was out there for a week. They had the International Men's Day celebration, so we flew to about 4 different islands where I had an opportunity to interact with boys as well as men. So that was very powerful and unique because rarely do I get an opportunity to engage boys and men that often, and to be invited exclusively for a men's conference was a great thing. And so now I'm just getting ready for my annual Kwanzaa tour. I do 4 cities every Kwanzaa, which gives me a day off to travel in between. So day 1 will be Baltimore, which is this coming Monday the 26th. Day 3 will be Jacksonville, Florida, Wednesday the 28th. Day 5 of Kwanzaa will be Detroit, Michigan, Friday, December 30th, and then we'll end everything up in Atlanta, Georgia, which is quickly becoming a new base of extreme support for Dr. Umar Johnson, and that'll be on January the 1st, New Year's Day, at the historic Shrine of the Black Madonna, Ralph David Abernathy Boulevard.
Wow, sounds awesome, really awesome. Again, you sound like a rock star on tour. You had mentioned about the Turks and Caicos Island. In the second part of our discussion, we'll be talking about economics. And 2 points you made I want to just comment on. One, you said it's surprising, but no surprise, that you find black people in places like Austria. Well, at this present stage, black people, number one out of every 5 people on the planet, 1.5 billion strong. So it's no surprise to see us everywhere where humans can be found. And second point, you talked about visiting Turks and Caicos Islands. Most people are unaware that the second fastest growing GDP in the world is Ethiopia, but number one is Turks and Caicos Islands with a population of 90.7% black people.
Wow, that's remarkable. That's remarkable. And when we talk about the economics, Kitty, 2 things that I see as I travel the world. One is the Chinese takeover. Clearly, there is an effort by the government of China to colonize African countries. I see it all throughout the Caribbean. It's now in South America. I'm beginning to see it in Africa without question. I mean, the segues that the Chinese are making into South Africa have been extensive. They have been abrupt, and they are very alarming to the brothers and sisters down there. In fact, that was a frequent concern that was expressed at nearly every venue where I spoke at this past October. The Chinese have now had one of their languages, Mandarin, is now an official language in South Africa. It is mandatorily taught in the public schools, which is very disrespectful, not because it's a Chinese language, but because Zulu and Xhosa, the native languages, and there are others in South Africa, they are not mandatory in the public schools curriculum in South Africa, but yet Mandarin is. So when you look at neo-apartheid, it looks like the new face of apartheid may no longer be the Anglo-Saxon, it may now be the Chinese.
It's interesting that you point that out. I do address this rather extensively in the new work. And did anyone down there kind of ask why Afro-Amers or African Americans, if you want to use that term, are not taking up this role, this void that China has been filling in insofar as a competent development partner?
Interesting. When I first went to Africa, which was back in 2005, I went as Minister of Education for the UNIA ACL. One of the Garveyite brothers and myself, we took a 12-hour bus ride. It may have been longer. We drove from Lagos all the way down to Port Harcourt. And in that bus ride, they were playing American rap videos on the tour bus. It was like a Greyhound. And a couple of the brothers turned and they asked, because they could realize I was American by my accent, and they said, "Can you please explain to us, how is it you guys have all this money?" And it was like videos of Jay-Z and 50 Cent, and this was back in 2005. And they said, "You guys have all this money. Why are you not coming over here to invest? Do you understand that because the African American is not taking up their obligation to the African continent financially, you are allowing the Chinese and the Arabs and the East Indians and white folk to come in and dominate all of our economic markets." And they didn't blame us for the Asian invasion, but they clearly were able to properly assess, in my opinion, the role that we play in what's going on in Africa. With a $1 trillion economy, Keely, it makes no sense that black people are not playing a major role in Africa's economics, but we understand why. Slavery has severed our psychological connection to the continent. We are a psychologically homeless people. Not all of us. You're not. I'm not. Many of us who have a Pan-Africanist paradigm, we're not. But most Africans in America don't have that. And when we look historically, when you look at America in the post-Garvey era, Garvey gets deported in 1927. You go from 1927 all the way up until the mid-'60s when you start seeing Stokely Carmichael become Kwame Ture, and then he begins pushing the Pan-African paradigm. And, of course, Malcolm, after his break with the Nation of Islam, reverts to the Garveyism that his father and mother taught him at home, but from roughly 27 to 67. 40 years, there was no significant Pan-Africanist ideology being pushed in America on a massive scale. All due respect to the organizations that come post-Garvey, but all of them took us away from Africa. They took us to Asia. They took us to all types of other identities. And I think, Keely, that culture, that anti-African culture, is something that is beginning to wither away. I would say positively. It's beginning to wither away, but it is still pretty much there. So we have a long way to go towards reestablishing that psychological connection between blacks in America and the mother continent.
I want to take that very, very point that you make and really kind of steer this to the bulk of where we intended to be speaking in the first half of our show, and that is the education process. And just as a sideline, education is not separate from the larger socialization that takes place within this country that has kind of deflected us from being functionally African on this planet. 1.5 billion people. I'm talking about the Afro-Americans. Hollywood has done a lot to steal this African identity. But let's talk about education. I know your work centers around the debilitation that education has placed on black boys in a broad spectrum of things. But I just want to, maybe you can embark on this conversation talking about how the education process has been part of the process to separate us from our global African identity.
Without question. When we look at education, and by the way, internationally, I find education to be a problem for African children. Internationally, I haven't been, the UK, Canada, Africa, South America, Central America. I haven't seen a school yet that really does education for us the way it needs to be done outside of some of the the wonderful African-centered schools we have here in America, the Marcus Garvey Shule, obviously in L.A., the Ujima Shule down in Washington, D.C., Baba Zulu. But education is at a crisis. And one of the biggest reasons why it's at a crisis is because it is very important. It is extremely important. If white folk are going to continue to dominate this planet, and of course they're getting significant pushback from Chinese who look like they're going to overtake the Europeans, if they're going to continue to dominate, they have to make sure that they keep black people undereducated about the political, economic time of day. It's no coincidence that our children are not taught economics in school. You can go from pre-K to 12, even at advanced schools, and get not a single course on economics. You get science, you get physics, you get calculus. You do not get economics. You do not get international business. You do not get international law. Some of this, PD, comes directly from the Rockefeller Foundation. Back in the 60s, I think it was, if not sooner, the Rockefeller family created a Rockefeller Board of Education. So a lot of people would ask, why would a oil family, a dynasty, be interested in creating their own Board of Education, especially when America already has one? They did it good that it was very important to control the direction of the curriculum. It was very important to control the textbooks that were used in school. Simply stated, the Rockefellers understood that if you want to control the people, if you want to guarantee your conglomerate success, you're going to have to control the education of the next generation. So the intentional dumbing down of all children, but especially black children, became a central tenet in racist structure post-civil rights era. And so when you look at public education in America, and you hit it on the nail a second ago when you spoke of socialization, the most important job of a school is not to educate. The most important job of a school is not to educate. The most important job of a school, as you said, is to socialize, which means, practically speaking, to teach children how to function within the political, economic structure of their society in that position that the society has already predetermined that they should occupy. In other words, white kids are educated to lead, and black children are educated to serve.
Excellent points that you make. We're going to invite you, our listening audience, to join the conversation as well with Brother Dr. Umar Johnson and your brother, the Conscious Rasta. We are at area code 646-716-6666. You have a comment? You have a question? Do call in. We'd love to hear from you. That's the Blog Talk queue. Hit the one button. That'll send me a flag and let me know that you do want to speak. When we talk about the progress of nations, we can see that the 17th century was dominated in the first part by Spain, the latter part by France. The 18th century dominated by France and Holland and other European powers. The 19th century, world domination by the British colonial empire. The 20th century, dominated by the U.S. empire. And now we can see very clearly that the 21st century is being dominated by the Asian tigers, led by the core nation, China. But then when we look at the factors that would usher in the next level of power, demographics looms very large in this whole progression of nations, and that would seem to indicate that the 22nd century, if we're still to use the Roman reference, would be the African century. Let me just ask you this. What type of education to power to be the dominant global power for a century or more is critically necessary in order to raise our youth up to be able to inherit an African century?
The first one, Brother Keedy, obviously would be political and military science. As you just articulated, when you look at the succession of European countries that have dominated the modern era, they have been able to do that through military technological sophistication. When you look at the rise of the European has concomitantly taken place with the rise of the gun and military innovation and technology. One thing that black people are allergic to because of our religious foundation is we are allergic to dealing with violence as a science, and we are allergic to dealing with military technology. If African people, and I know that we will, in order for African people to bring about a true revolutionary Pan-African nationalist resurgence, we're definitely going to have to understand the role that military power plays in world politics. Look at America. America is where she is because of her military technology. Even after the fall of Hitler, as you know, what America did, it did not arrest all of the Nazi generals. What America did was through a secret operation, and I'm forgetting the name of it, they actually brought to America the top Nazi scientists and military experts so that they could help refuel America's military resurgence. So black people are going to have to deal with military warfare, and they're going to have to deal with it within the context of political science. Okay, I believe a great white general once said that politics is war by another means. So you can't separate political science from military science. And so we have to teach our children military science. How was Africa taken by the Europeans? How was the European able to take Africa? And the firearm figured prominently into the European conquest of Africa. The European would have never taken Africa had he not had the firearm of superior military technology. So we have to talk about that. The second one, closely allied with military might, it might even be the father of military might, and that is economic science. Black children must be taught economic and financial science. They must be taught international investments. They must be taught the science behind stock markets. They must be taught political economy. What is the relationship between a people's political power and their economic power? In America, what's one of the biggest problems we have when we look at presidential elections or any other type of election? One of the biggest problems we have is we fail to understand how our economic devastation as a people plays a prominent role in our political outlook. If you cannot finance the campaign of someone running for office, if you cannot put significant amounts of concentrated wealth behind my campaign, the fact that you came out and voted for me at the end of the day absolutely means nothing. Why? Because I cannot prove you voted for me, but I can definitely prove that you financed my campaign. The hand that pays is the hand that rules. When we look at Bill Clinton, George Bush, Barack Obama, Donald Trump, and people ask the question, why were they not accountable to African Americans? It's very clear. Because when you look at the top 10 to 20 campaign contributors, none of those corporations had black skin. So until we organize our money, we'll never be able to take back our politics.
You're making excellent points. And another point that I think of the education research that you brought forward is so very, very critical is the chemical castration of the minds of black boys and increasingly black females, but specifically your book focuses in on the chemical mental castration. Is that an inappropriate way of describing what you're talking about?
I think it's very appropriate, Keedy. In fact, when Psychoacademic Holocaust was first published, a lot of people questioned the title. Many people thought that I was being a bit too extreme and that maybe I was exaggerating by calling the current school-to-prison pipeline reality a Holocaust. Many people said, how dare you refer to this as a psychoacademic Holocaust? I said, well, let's look at what a Holocaust is. A Holocaust is systematic extermination of a defenseless people. Is that not what is happening to black males in America right now? Not only with the school system, mass incarceration, criminal justice, economic castration, chemical castration, massive unemployment. When you and the consequence, what is the consequence of miseducation? What is the consequence of economic castration? It is death. It is mass incarceration, and it is death. So without question, what is being done to our boys is a Holocaust. And when you look at this Holocaust, Keedy, it comes in 6 stages. The first stage is miseducation. Black boys are deliberately miseducated and undereducated from preschool until approximately the 3rd grade. This is on purpose. This is not an accident. It has nothing to do with poverty. It has nothing to do, let me change that. It has very little to do with poverty, very little to do with unmarried single black mothers. It has very little to do with hip-hop, very little to do with sagging pants, very little to do with dilapidated schoolhouses, and very little to do with the fact that teachers are being underpaid. Public education, as I said earlier, is designed for the black boy to fail. Why? The proper education of a black boy is the most revolutionary process that you could undertake in the United States. Why? Because in order for America to keep the status quo that it has, white at the top and black at the bottom, in order for America to perpetuate the illusion of European supremacy, black children must be miseducated. If you properly educate black children, you put them in a position to challenge white folk for political economic dominance of this society. And that is something that America cannot allow. That's why black kids will always do less well on the standardized testing as a group. We get individual children who excel, but as a group, they will always struggle. Black children will always do less well than white children on the IQ test. And I'm actually sitting at my desk in my office because I have a stack of psychological evaluations that I'm typing up. So I'm looking at IQ tests right here. And on nearly every IQ scale that I have in front of me, Keedy, the black child is struggling on the verbal scale. And to be clear to your listening audience, the reason the black-white test gap, the 15-point black-white test gap is being perpetuated, Keedy, it's by way of the verbal scale test. I need your listening audience to be very specific about that. It's the verbal scale. In other words, Keedy, it's that part of the test that relates to how well black children can understand, comprehend, and use the words and concepts that come out of middle-class white America. And I would argue that the verbal scale of intelligence doesn't even measure intelligence. It measures your access to middle-class white American social influence. That's all it measures. And the reason they will never take that scale out of the IQ test is if you take that scale out of the IQ test, Keedy, you will have a reality where black children will start to do as well as whites, and in many cases, black children would exceed white children on their own IQ test. So they must keep that in there to give the illusion of European supremacy. So that's the first stage, miseducation, and then the second is special education.
Yeah. During the course of your research into the performance of African youth within the school system, I'm sure you've come across the gap between indigenous African-born youth coming into the United States and their performance in the school systems versus American-born youth. Obviously, there is a significant gap there. I know we raised 3 daughters, and we were very proud parents to be at all of the honor roll ceremonies, but it seemed so often that the only black boys that were there were children of immigrants from Ethiopia, Sierra Leone, Liberia, Nigeria, and Ghana.
Yes, and I'll tell you why that is.
Mm-hmm.
African children, first of all, our slavery ended allegedly in 1865. Africans did not come out of their slavery, known as colonialism, until 1957, which is to say that Africans have only enjoyed for 50 or 60 years what we have enjoyed for 150 or 60 years. So they are very, very committed, very, very serious, and they value education way more than African American children do. In fact, when I go to Africa, I'm often asked to speak to children since I'm an educator. And in those dilapidated schoolhouses in Africa, Kitty, where they don't have the laptops and the cell phones, they don't have even books in some cases, those African children will sit there, Kitty, spellbound for hours. I don't have to have a PowerPoint. I don't have to have any videos. I don't have to use any type of teaching aids. And I can keep them all day and not a child would move unless they have to use the restroom. That's how serious they are about learning. You compare that to African American children, you get the total opposite reality. The reason they excel, our children, is because they're more committed. It is not unusual to have an African child show up in America who has already read a science book from page to page and mastered every concept they're in. When they come to America, they are above not only the black children, they're above the white children, because motivation is a prerequisite for academic excellence. Motivation is a prerequisite for academic excellence. And one of the things that is not dealt with enough in our schools is the crisis in under-motivation as it relates to black children. 85% of the time, Petey, when I'm conducting an evaluation for a learning disability, an evaluation for autism, an evaluation for intellectual disability, ADHD, emotional disturbance, 85% of the time, I'm really acting as a coach more than the school psychologist, because I have to coach our children into doing their best throughout the entire test, because one, they don't want to be there, two, they don't value academics, three, their parents do not make academics a part of family culture, so it becomes a struggle. And the reason why it's so critically important that I struggle to motivate them during the evaluation, Katie, is because when they score low on that IQ test, they're going to be called retarded, even if they're not. And white folks don't care, no matter how much I argue, that this kid is not retarded. This kid actually has normal intelligence. He may even have above average intelligence, but he simply was not motivated. He didn't check his work. He skipped a lot of the answers. He didn't do his best. They don't care. European culture is all about the data. It's about what the numbers show. So if his IQ score is under 70, he's going to be called retarded even if he was gifted. And that's how critical these IQ tests are, and that's why I'm constantly trying to motivate our kids to do your best. But that lack of motivation, Kitty, it is eroding. It is eroding the potential of the African intelligence. Amos Wilson, whom I consider one of the greatest black scholars to have ever lived, and definitely probably the greatest psychologist who has ever lived in modern times, his book, Awakening the Natural Genius of the African Child. We are at war to awaken that genius, Kitty, because the way the school system is designed, especially for our boys, it does not value original thought. It does not value imagination. It does not teach our children critical analysis. School is like church. Schools operate like church, and the first schools in America were actually created by the church. That's why the oldest schools are church schools. And in church, you are simply expected to do what? Believe what you are taught. So you can graduate with honors from almost any school in America, straight A's and B's, having known nothing, if you can regurgitate. They want you to memorize and regurgitate. The whole public education system is based on memorization and regurgitation. And that's exactly why white children in America, Kitty, are ranked 21st, top 25 most industrialized nations in the world. America is almost at the bottom of the list. And if black people only want black children to do as well as white children, that means we are content with having our children also at the bottom of that list. It is really time for an academic revolution in the black community.
Awesome. I do definitely agree, and I love the way you put this. You know, there was this metric that came out not too long ago, several months ago, talking about at the present rate of growth of wealth and wealth disparity, that it would take 228 years for an African-American family to catch up with the current wealth of the white family. A lot of people threw up their arms and got all hyper about that. But I said, but wait a minute, why are you looking in the mirror and expecting to see a white person, a white standard looking back at you? If we consider that the 45.7 million Africans born domiciled in America, as well as 2 million immigrants living amongst our community, constitute the wealthiest, best educated, best resourced and experienced collection of 1.5 billion Africans on this planet, instead of looking in the mirror and seeing a white standard looking back, we need to look in the mirror and see ourselves as part of an African dynamic whose demographics and natural resource wealth indicates that we can very well likely inherit an entire century. So in shifting away from the old paradigms to new paradigms, there is a paradigm shift going on this planet. Obviously, education is going to be a very significant part of this global shift, especially for those of us who consider ourselves to be 1.5 billion Africans on this planet. Let me just ask you, Brother Umar, based upon your own visions of this paradigm shift in education, what are some of the most fundamental changes that the average family and community is going to have to develop?
One of our biggest problems, Kitty, 3 things right off the top. For most black people, our financial matters, we consider them to be top secret. Our financial family culture and our personal financial culture, we consider that to be private. We do not in any way, shape, or form, because of our radical individualism, do not feel that we have to give a community accounting for how we spend the money that we earn. This is one of our biggest problems. You can bring black people together and you can talk about our problems and you can talk about what we need to do, but the minute you say, listen, we're going to have to start operating like a church. Because as you know, Kitty, in a lot of our churches, and we will have to talk about those churches because they play a big problem as it relates to education and economics and politics. But in many of our major churches, in order for you to join, they must see your tax return. In order to join. And based on your income, they tell you the percentage of tithes you're going to have to pay to belong to that church. Exactly what the black community has to do. Why does the church do that? The church does that because if I have a $20 million building and I have to give that white bank a certain mortgage every month, I have to guarantee that money. So in order for me to guarantee him his money, you're going to have to guarantee me your tithe. That is how sophisticated the conscious community has to become. We are still ambivalent about making black people financially accountable to the collective. Black people are not interested in being financially accountable to the collective. We have to change the paradigm that says my money is my personal business. It is not, because the way you spend your money, much like the way you raise your child. That's a very close comparison, Brother Keaty, because most black people also consider their children to be their own business. Well, the problem with your children being your own business is if you don't raise your children correctly, your child may end up killing my child. Your child may end up doing harm against the community, which is why in African culture, the children do not belong to the parents. In no African culture do children belong to the parents. They belong to the village. Everyone has a say-so over the raising of the children. And I believe we need to embrace a village collective consciousness as it relates to our economic accountability to the whole. Your money has to now be concerned about the best interest of all black people, not just yourself. That's number one. Number two, Keaty, we're going to have to wage war on the holiday shopping frenzy. What's going on right this second? What is going on right this second as we're having this conversation? Blacks in Philadelphia, $3 billion holiday shopping price tag. That's just Philadelphia. New York City, $8 billion holiday season shopping tag. I can imagine what it's for in Chicago, Los Angeles, Houston,
Can I just put a couple of
Yes,
metrics
sir.
on this to back you
Yes,
up,
sir.
because you are telling very profound and insightful truths. 1 year ago, the siren call across the black community was justice or else. The or else was allegedly an economic boycott of the Christmas holiday shopping season. And it was a widespread call by highly credible people across all black media. Well, the months of November and December 2015, African Americans set a record high of the excess amount of money they spend over their normal yearly pattern. In those 2 months was $49.7 billion. That was almost the exact same amount that China spent in over 142 development projects across the African continent, for which China, which is now taken over from the United States and European Union as Africa's biggest trade partner, gets a 5-to-1 return on investment. So if you're talking about blacks in New York indulging in a holiday shopping season to the tune of $8 billion, had that money been redirected into development investments on the African continent or around the African world, and they gotten a 5-to-1 return on those investments, we would have a whole different outlook, Brother Umar. Continue.
In other words, what you are saying right now, Keith, what you are saying right now is that Africans in America, and this is fundamentally Marcus Garvey here, fundamental Pan-Africanism here, blacks in America, if we were serious, we could finance the rebirth of African people internationally from right here in these United States.
That's true. It is a very profound insight.
It is us. We're the richest group of Africans on the face of the earth. It is us. But again, that psychological connection has been destroyed. And then the other thing, Keedy, look at this now. $2 billion on sneakers this year. $2 billion on sneakers. Air Jordans do you need in a year? $600 million on McDonald's. I mean, is the Big Mac that good? And I know you, with your health expertise, I know you take issue with that, because not only are you giving McDonald's $600 million, you're killing yourself in the process, and then $4 billion on alcohol and booze. I mean, really? And then $9 billion on perm, weave, and hair care products. And here's what bothers me. We will fight with the United States Department of Education. We will fight with the 50 state departments of education against miseducation, Keedy. But at the same time, we begging white folks to fix the schools. We have in our capability to construct on our own, without a single grant or handout from another group, schools for every single black child in America, independent, not charter, independent schools for every black child in America. And what's so sad, Keedy, we could do it with our Christmas money, not our Easter money. You can keep your Easter money. You can keep your 4th of July money, which you shouldn't be celebrating anyway. You can keep your birthday money. All you have to do is sacrifice Christmas for 1 year, and you can build infrastructure in every major black community in these United States.
Brother Umar Johnson, I'm so proud to have this conversation with you today. For someone who's so up to date on the statistics and what they mean in context of sustainable development, sustainable power. Just looking at, and just the figures that you were mentioning about these areas of spending, precise figures, and I'm really proud of you for being so up to date. A lot of people are citing old statistics and old metrics, and that doesn't necessarily serve our best self-interest. But just looking at full-service supermarkets, over 200 of which exist in this country, black people own only one chain, Calhoun's out of Montgomery, Alabama. Meanwhile, we spend $80 billion a year on full-service supermarkets. If we took 1/6 of 1% of what we are spending currently, we could expand black-owned supermarkets by 500%, and that could be done in one season. Brother Umar, obviously education, communication, mass media, and organization scientifically based organization all loom large toward making this transformation. Give us your ideas about the feasibility of our people making such a shift.
I think it is very feasible, but here comes the challenge, though, Keith. When you look at black leadership in the post-Dr. King assassination era, black leadership was reinvented by the United States government, and it reinvented itself as well. And in the post-Dr. King era, if you've noticed, we have not had a sustainable, protracted movement to change anything for black folks in these United States. For example, the abolitionist movement, it was sustained, it was protracted. It existed over years. You look at the civil rights movement, it was sustained, it was protracted. The Garvey movement, sustained, protracted. In the post-Dr. King era, we haven't had not one sustained, protracted movement. If you look at it today, what do we have? We have one-day revolutions. Mm-hmm. I love the Million Man March. I was there. I will never forget it. One of the most spiritually awakening days of my life. But it was a one-day revolution. Right now, Al Sharpton is preparing a march on Washington, D.C. for January 14th. Okay? A one-day revolution. How did we go from sustained, protracted movements to one-day revolution? What do you know has ever changed in a day? First of all, in order to replace a human habit, psychologically speaking, it normally takes 21 days consecutively. Mm-hmm. 21 to change a habit. So if it takes 21 to change a habit, what are you going to do in one day? So we have gotten lazy. We have lost our commitment. We are no longer interested in sustained, protracted movements, because in order for the movement to be sustained and protracted, that means what? Your financing of that movement has to also be sustained and protracted. So we have to look at how black leadership, in particular, singling no one out, but looking at it all in the same vein. I think black leadership has failed black people from the perspective that they are catering to our laziness instead of forcing us to do what we need to do. It's like church. Church caters to your laziness. Church keeps it real simple. Come pray and pay. If you want to come to Bible study, you can, but it's not required. If you want to help out with the school fund, you can, but it's not required. All you're required to do is give that money and show up for prayer. You can't do that with a revolutionary struggle. If we want to have an economic revolution, which is absolutely necessary, you don't come out for one day. You might have to come out every day, because in revolution, you must sacrifice. So it is time for a sustained, protracted economic movement, the first thing of which must be done, credit unions and banks. It takes $250,000, $250,000 to start a credit union. That's it. $250,000. We spend that in one day in most black cities. 10 times over in one day. To start a bank, $1 million. You can start a small bank with $1 million. We need economic institutions to finance the infrastructure building that we need. If you look at it, Keedy, one of the biggest differences between the black community and other communities is the church is the center of our community and the bank is the center of theirs.
That's right. Repeat that one more time.
The church is the center of black community, and the bank is the center of a white community. What banks do is they build the communities around them because they are financing all of the small business loans. So you put a bank in the middle of nowhere, you're going to have a thriving community in 5 years. But if you put a church in the middle of nowhere, you'll never get a kid, because churches take from the people. Banks invest in the people. In fact, the bank is more of a church than the church is, because the bank is creating that heaven on earth that black people need. And another paradigm shift, Brother Keedy, is we have to change the religious indoctrination that has black people allergic to saving and investing money. We hate money. we want to get it so we can translate it into useless, worthless material assets. But black people don't like money. We just want the money so we can get these things that we can barter for. But black folks are allergic to saving and investing, and a lot of that comes from church. From the day you're born, you're taught that money is evil. From the day you're born, you're taught that a rich man will never get into heaven. From the day you're born, you're taught that the meek shall inherit the earth, that the poor shall go to heaven. You're taught this over and over again. It is drilled into the subconscious of every black person that God does not look favorably upon them who do well in life. And we have to shatter, explode, and exterminate that myth, because that is an unconscious program that is functioning deep within the psyche of every black man and woman in this country.
That's so very true. We do, once again, invite you, our listening audience, somebody out there. You may have a comment, you may have a question you want to share with Brother Umar Johnson. You hopefully won't be making a speech. If you do, you know I'm going to cut you short and get to your question at area code 646-716-9835. Again, 646-716-9835. When in the Blog Talk queue, hit the 1 button. I'll see your flag. I'll put you right on the conversation. Brother Umar, you get a chance to travel very extensively. You have these conversations with a number of people. We do know that, obviously we're going to get backlash from people who should know better, who should do better. But then there is a great majority of people who are ready, willing, able, and prepared to start moving forward. There's a thing out here called Afro-pessimism. I'd like to have your perspective on this Afro-pessimism and what you are observing. Are the people ready to really engage some significant transformation?
I believe that Afro-pessimism, which we call in psychology learned self-helplessness, is at the heart and core of why we haven't made any progress. Black people want to change. I think most of us are ready for a change. But what the one change that is needed in order for the greater change to occur, the one change that is needed in order for the greater change to occur is for black people to be willing to psychologically invest in each other. That's the problem, Keedy. It was Marcus Garvey called the curse. Marcus Garvey called it the curse of petty differences. See, we want change, but we're not willing to humble ourselves to other black folk. We're not willing to forgive them for petty slights. We're not willing to work with people who we don't know that well. We're not willing to sacrifice for the greater good of the collective. In other words, easy for the Chinese, the Arab, the Latino, the East Indian, the European Jew, the Anglo-Saxon. What comes easy for every other culture comes at a significant psychological cost for blacks. And that is every culture has cultural capital that breeds a cultural commitment and consistency. Culture is king for everyone but black folks. That's why the Chinese can come, the Mexicans can come, they can live in the same house, 20 people deep. Could you imagine 20 black folks living in the same house? Within 2 days, you got to fight. Within 2 days, somebody talking about somebody that stole something. Within 2 days, I need more space. We don't like each other. Self-hatred is the elephant in the room whenever more than 2 black people come together. The minute that third black person walks into the room, Brother Keedy, a clique is going to be started. That third person feels obligated not to work with both people, but to take sides with one versus the other. I have always said this, and I'll say it now. Until we hate racism, until we hate oppression, until we hate the backwardness in which we exist more than we hate ourselves, nothing will change. Most black people, Keedy, are motivated to see black conflict. I mean, look at the television. Do you realize the most popular shows are shows where conflict is the order of the day. Look at Empire. Conflict between black folks drives the whole show. Look at the hip-hop industry. If you are not beefing with another rapper, your albums will not sell. You must
and look
have
at the
conflict.
New York. Look at the New York Video Debate Society.
Oh,
if
my
it's
God.
not conflict-based, they're not getting the YouTube hits.
Thank you.
Thank
you. No, it's true, though. It's true.
Eyes, but you know what I'm saying.
But you're speaking the truth. Conflict-based consciousness. It sells. Look at the reality shows on TV. Why do they sell? Because it's based on black folks. Now, white folks ain't going to watch that stuff a lot, but it's the top shows for us. We don't want to see black people working together, building communities. Why do I want to see that? Why do I want to see a happy family? Why do I want to see a father loving his wife and loving his children and working through their problems together? I don't want to see that.
That's right.
I want to see why did I get married. That's what I want to see. I want to see 4 dysfunctional black couples fight for 2 hours on television. That's what I want to see.
Yeah,
and this is why Dr. Carter G. Woodson, exactly, and this is why Dr. Carter G. Woodson said what? If you control a man's thinking, you don't have to tell him to go to the back door. He will go on his own. And when he gets there, if there is no door, this is the most profound part of Dr. Woodson's quote. When he gets to the back, if there is no door, he will make one. That means that black folks will create negativity, Brother Keedy, even if it's none there.
Right. We're going to take a call here, but what you were talking about just reminds me a bit of this quote I used from Ken Bridges, the co-founder of Mata, who was unfortunately victim to the D.C. sniper. He said, when it comes to reparations, we owe ourselves internal reparations. We simply must do 2 things. We got to love ourselves more and love our race more, and then we will look inside and do for self. If you don't mind, I'm going to go right to the telephone line. Area code 702. You are on with your brother, our brother, Brother Dr. Umar Johnson. Your name, where are you calling from?
Good morning, Brother Keedy. This is Franklin G. How you living?
Hey, we black, we shine. Brother Franklin G., one of Las Vegas's wonderful radio broadcasters. You know Brother Dr. Umar.
Yes, I do. How you doing? Salam alaikum, sir. Thanks for taking the time to come talk to us again. A lot of the stuff we're talking about doesn't really trickle down, for lack of a better term, to our millennials. When we look at somebody like Carter G. Woodson, or we talk about Frederick Douglass, your grandfather, and things of that nature, this younger generation doesn't have the same kind of impetus, because where are our master teachers coming from? Where would they grab onto other than, the Killer Mikes and the rap artists that do their thing periodically? Where is our institutional educational backgrounds that fortifies people like yourself, Brother Keedy, and myself? Where are they getting it from?
Great question. Couple points on that. Number one, to draw a quick analogy in answering, which I think was a profound question and profound point that my brother just raised. Number one, every black person in America knows the Pledge of Allegiance by heart. Every black person in America knows the Star-Spangled Banner by heart. You might not pledge the flag. You may not have never sung the song, but you know it by heart. And the reason you know it by heart is because every state requires that children attend school. Every state requires that. In other words, white folk have systematically institutionalized what it is they want black people to know and believe. The problem is black people have not systematically institutionalized everything we feel black children need to know and appreciate. We need institutions. We need schools. It doesn't make sense for us to have all these churches and don't have any schools. Until you institutionalize your socialization, until you institutionalize your education, until you institutionalize your cultural indoctrination, then you can never prepare our babies for the reality that they have to assume. We don't have any infrastructure. Go to a Chinese community. They have schools, they have community centers, they got banks. They're thoroughly institutionalized. We have very little infrastructure that we control. In fact, when I speak across the country, I can count on one hand. I'm sorry, let me take that back. When I speak across the world, I can count on one hand. And I've been I'll be in China in May, but after China, I would have spoken on every continent. I can name on one hand the amount of venues I've spoken at that were owned by black folks. We own nothing, even in Africa. We own nothing, even in Canada. We own nothing, even in the UK. Black folks don't own any institutions. The only way you're going to be able to put black children through a true rites of passage, the only way we're going to be able to re-engineer the psyche of African people is to re-engineer it in our children, and the only way you're going to do that is to be able to control the context, control the environment, control the reality, and you cannot do that without school. And until we get serious about building independent schools, and let me say something really quick if I may. Back in the 70s and 80s, there was a push for black community control of the public schools. I'm sure you brothers remember that. The organizers said, we want to control the schools in our neighborhood. Well, guess what white folks did in 1990? Because of the push for black control of the community schools from 1970 to 1990, white folks came up with charter schools in 1990. And they were able to hijack and redirect the black community control of public schools movement and pervert it into a charter school movement. And because charter schools are funded by the school district, black people gave up their fight for community control and took a charter school, failing to realize that you have no control over that charter. The charter school is still owned by the state, and the charter school is still supervised by the public school district. And to emphasize that point, more black charter schools were closed down, Brother Keedy, in 2014. More black charter schools were closed down in 2014 or either 2015 than any year since charter schools were started in 1990. Charter schools are not a solution. They never were. We need to go back to community control of the public schools as a Band-Aid because it's not a solution. Coming from a Marcus Garvey perspective, the only solution is what you can control. The only solution is what you can control. So we get community control of the public schools until such time that we have the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academies all over the United States.
Hoping that happens soon. And hoping that happens soon, you know, we appreciate you. You hadn't been back in Vegas. You were here last January. But as we look forward again with the youth, if education isn't there and politics doesn't seem to be there, is there anything under this new administration in terms of the struggle that he's going to oppress us with that would possibly bring us together?
Absolutely not. One thing that we have to understand about self-hating people are only reactionary. It takes love to be pro-actionary. It takes love to get up and do for your people because it needs to be done. That's not black people. If you look at it, every single thing we do it in response to what some external stimuli has done to us. Every single thing. We are not pro-actionary because we do not believe in each other. What does the book say? As a man thinketh in his heart. And one thing that we have to be able to expose is the hypocrisy of black consciousness. The hypocrisy of black consciousness has to be exposed because underneath the locks, and underneath the shea butter, and underneath the sound of the African drum, and underneath the African garb, and underneath the trips to Kemet, underneath all of that, deep in the psyche of the African, there is a molecule of self-hate that has never been dug up and destroyed. And until we dig up and destroy that molecule of self-hate that lies at the heart of every black person, then we will always suffer from the psychological residuals of slavery, which I refer to as post-traumatic slavery disease, and the only way to get rid of it is through the next generation. Let me say this. When I decided to open up the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy, which is not yet open, but I've already made the decision that we will have the school in 2017, and I've already made the decision, and I hope that the Most High blesses me with this and the ancestors help me to bring it to fruition, but I've named August the 21st of 2018, which is my Earth Day, but also the anniversary of my greatest hero, Nat Turner, That's going to be the first day of school at the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy. So we got 2017 to get to school, and we have all 2018 until August the 21st to be prepared to meet our young men on the first day. But in the long-term vision of the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy, it's going to be a residential school. I want the children to stay overnight. I'm also the product of a residential high school. A lot of parents took issue with that. They said, Doc, we support you. We want our sons to come, but why do they have to stay? There's two reasons why I want my school to be residential. Number one, children are taught the self-hatred of their parents. Children are indoctrinated with the white worship of their parents. Children are educated into the learned self-helplessness of their parents in order for us to kill the Negro. In order for us to kill the Negro so the African can be born, we're going to have to separate the kids from the parents. Not permanently, because psychologically they need their parents. So, of course, parents will visit. Of course, they will go home on the weekends. Of course, they will be home for the holidays and summertime. Okay? But we need them away from them because it is in the homes. The homes are not psychologically healthy. The homes are not conducive to revolutionary thinking. So we need residential schools to bring about a revolutionary, black-minded young man.
Well, thank you, brother, so much. I'll let some other people get on. Stay up, Brother Keedy. I'm going to holler with you during the week, man. Appreciate you, Doc.
Oh, Brother Frank.
Thank you, my brother. And shout out to the whole Las Vegas. And let me put this out there to Las Vegas. I was there in January, sold out event. I need a larger venue because everybody couldn't sit, so I don't know if my brother who just called in or Brother Keedy will talk after the call. But I want to come back to Las Vegas. I want to come in February, Black History Month, but I need help finding a venue that I can rent for 8 hours that can seat at least 400 people. I need a 400-seater in Las Vegas that doesn't cost an arm and a leg. And if someone can do that, please send me that information.
Well, we do know Brother Franklin is the person. Brother Franklin, before you go, you will be broadcasting this evening, Wednesday evening, as well as your Friday show. Can you tell everybody out there about your show and how they can tune in?
Well, we have The Breakdown on the only black radio station here in the state of Nevada. Been broadcasting for 44 years. That's KCEP. We are black. We are unabashedly black tonight. At East Coast time, it'll be 9 p.m., but West Coast time is 6 p.m. We have a thing called The Breakdown where we have a panel show, and we talk for 2 hours to the community. And basically, it's free black radio. Brother Keedy was just on for Thanksgiving again. We're going to bring you back soon. But out here in Las Vegas, we have 108s, and that's KCEP. You can check us out. I'm trying to get Warren. I think Warren Valentine's calling in tonight to talk about the Boulay and their new relationship with the Trumpster. But we are a black radio station. You can always check us out, KCEP. Brother Umar, when you come back, we got to get you in the studio.
Oh, my brother, without question. And, again, help me locate that venue so we can lock that date down because February is a very busy month. I literally speak just about all 28 days in February, so I really need to lock a date, a venue for Vegas so I can have that other town for all the colleges that are going to be inviting me in.
That sounds like a plan. Maybe we'll talk to them at CSN or UNLV because we have a program that we're doing at the end of the month where we'll have Asher Akwesi and Yusuf Salam, one of the Central Park Five. We'll try to figure out how to squeeze some other stuff in. But, it's a small black community out here. And just like you said, that education, because we're all from different places out here, psychologically, if it wasn't for Brother Keedy, we'd still be in 1979.
I heard that, my brother. I'll share.
I'll be talking to you a little bit later today. Get you a copy of the new book.
All right, great.
Anybody else?
I'll keep listening.
All right, and we are. I hope you don't mind, Brother Umar. We are going a little bit over time. I know we.
Sure. I'm good, my brother.
But
I'm good.
When you own the radio station, you can
do what you want
about what it.
Power.
One of the most important conversations. That's power.
Yes,
I
sir.
agree. And ownership is power. Owning the schools, owning the higher education. I want to talk to you about this other critical area, which is a perfect bridge between the discussions about economics and the discussion about the power of education to transform, and that is HBCUs. We currently have 103 HBCUs in this country. 11 of them have already closed. There are as many as 9 right now in danger of going bankrupt immediately, and it's been forecast that at the end of the next 30 years or so, there may be only 35 HBCUs even left open. My question to you, Brother Umar, are HBCUs still relevant? If they are, how can they do better? If they're not relevant, can they be made relevant to the global African progress?
Definitely, definitely. And right before I answer that HBCU question, which is so critical and it's personally relevant as well, I'm getting a message here to drop the information for the LA event. A couple of listeners, just to quickly throw that out. I will be in Los Angeles, California, Saturday, January the 7th. Again, Dr. Umar Johnson, speaking in Los Angeles for the first time since 2014. So it would have been almost 3 years at the Ward AME Church. And that's going to be on Saturday the 7th. Doors open up at 3 o'clock. Program from 5 until 8. Children 12 and younger are free. Elders 65 and over are free. Again, children 12 and under are free. Elders 65 and older are free. You can get your tickets at princeofpanafricanism.eventbrite.com, or you can go to my website, drumarjohnson.com, and you can click on the Eventbrite link from there. Please get your tickets early because LA is a very supportive Dr. Umar Johnson city, and we're expecting us to do really well on the turnout, and I don't want you to be turned away in case the event sells out. The other announcement is San Diego. I will be speaking in San Diego on Sunday, January the 29th at Mama Makeda's World Beat Cultural Center. The World Beat Cultural Center, Sunday, January the 29th, but more importantly, at the World Beat Center in San Diego, Friday and Saturday, January 27th and 28th, and this is relevant for Las Vegas, very relevant for Las Vegas. I will be hosting the 3rd National Invitation Training Conference for those who want to be leaders in the National Independent Black Parent Association. As you know, Brother Keaty, we got issues in the schools. We've been talking about it on the show, and anyone who wants to start a chapter of the National Independent Black Parent Association anywhere in the West Coast or the Midwest or anywhere in the country, because it's a national invitation, but we move it around. The first training conference was Baltimore in May. The second training conference was Houston in September. The third training conference, San Diego in January. Please come out. The Parent Association is comprised of 7 committees, a special education committee to fight against special ed fraud, a school discipline committee to fight against unfair suspension and expulsion of black children, school policy committee to fight against the rules in the schools that disproportionately bias and work against black children, social support committee to help all of our single parents who are out there struggling to raise our children. There will be a homeschooling committee to help organize all the parents who are homeschooling or want to homeschool, and there will be a parent advocacy committee so that we can train a cadre of parents to go into the schools, because it is my position, Brother Keaty, that no black parent should ever go into a school meeting by themselves. You need to go with support, because you will be manipulated, you will be coerced, you will be bullied, and yes, your signature may even be forged. I've seen that happen as well. So please come January 27th, January 28th, Friday and Saturday, San Diego, California, World Beat Cultural Center, 9 in the morning to 6 p.m. You cannot be late. I know it's 8 hours, but we need all of that 8 hours for me to train you on how to deal with our parents, how to deal with the schools, how to organize and lead. 9 to 6. If you really care about black children, if you really care about black parents, if you're looking for an organization you want to be a part of that's about more than rhetoric, that's about action, please meet me in San Diego, California. Now, historically black colleges. You know, Brother Key, when I started the fundraiser for FDMG, our goal was to purchase a black college. St. Paul's College, Lawrenceville, Virginia. Well, guess what? A couple days ago, I was informed by the auction company in Richmond, Virginia, that is representing the sale for St. Paul's College, that the college has been sold. It has been sold to a white developer who's going to tear most of it down and turn it into a white residential townhouse community. So not only are the schools being shut down, Kitty, the history of the school is being erased. They're not just shutting them down. They're erasing the total history. The selling price?
The selling price?
Yes, it was $2 million. $2 million. and I'm a little upset, Kitty. I'm a little upset because although we raised $700,000, and I'm very thankful to all the brothers and sisters across the country who have donated, I'm upset because $2 million for an entire college, that's a steal, Brother Kitty. That's a steal. But I wasn't able to get our people to take some of that $600 million that they spent on McDonald's, and I wasn't able to get them to take some of that $2 billion on sneakers and $4 billion on alcohol and $9 billion on hair care. I wasn't even able to get them to take a few pennies of that and throw it my way, not only for FDMG, but to keep a black college in the hands of black people. Economic priorities, Keaton, they all screwed up. Black people.
Now, you know,
let me throw this stat out real quick and let me be quiet. I'm sorry about that. Black folks are 3 times as likely to buy Mercedes-Benz as white folks. Look at this. Black folks are 3 times as likely to purchase a Mercedes-Benz than a white person, although the white person has 3 times the wealth of the black person. Look at that, kid. Look at that.
Right. It goes back to that shoe metric that you were talking about a little bit earlier. We want to put on the accoutrements of wealth, superficial wealth, but insofar as generational wealth, sometimes I was in a room with 2 internet millionaires way back in the early .com days, and I noticed they still were wearing their good luck sneakers. So we can do better than that. But I just wanted to you and I talked a little bit off the air, getting ready for today's show, about the 400-plus schools that have been closed in black neighborhoods, communities across 7 cities in the United States: Kansas City, Detroit, Philadelphia, Baltimore, D.C., New York, and I think that may have been on 7 of them. Have you considered an alternative of finding one of these urban school properties to acquire? I've literally seen some of them being sold for pennies on the dollar, redeveloped, regentrified, or what they call revitalized, we call gentrification, and turned into valuable urban economic assets. Have you considered about acquiring one of these closed urban school districts, some of which have campuses as big as 18 acres?
Well, first of all, let me say this to you, Brother Keith. As you come across those properties, please forward them to me. Because with regard to the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy school search, I am not limited geographically. That school will be put at whatever school I feel is the best bet for the best buck. So if there's a school in Las Vegas that's up for sale and they only want a couple $100,000 for it, okay, or they're willing to enter into a lease-to-own agreement, I will come out there and take a look at it. One of the difficulties I'm having with the school search is the public schools are conducting the sale of their properties in a very clandestine way. And I know why they're doing this. They're doing this because, remember, they're shutting these schools down, Kitty, to clear out the black folks for gentrification. The public school shutdown movement is part of the larger ethnic cleansing of black folks from inner cities. So they don't really want to sell these schools to black people because it defeats the purpose of having closed them down in the first place. In other words, the new face of gentrification is the charter school. Let me tell you how this operates. Let's say there's a dense community in Las Vegas, very dense with black folks. It's 95% black, hypothetically. White folks want to take it back. Maybe it's close to water. Maybe it's close to downtown. Maybe it's sitting on some natural resources. Maybe they're plotting a new business zone. Whatever the case may be, they need those blacks out of there. What's the best way to get rid of those blacks while drawing the least amount of scrutiny? You know what you do? You find a black person who you're going to hire to front your charter school operation. Now, it's your charter school, but you're going to get a black person to front it, which means they're going to go into that black community in Las Vegas. They're going to tell all the black parents, we got a new charter school coming. These schools ain't no good. You're going to be able to pull your kids out, yada, 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 yada. All the black parents are happy. So they acquire this charter school in the middle of the black neighborhood, which was a black public school that was shut down. That was a charter. The white folks are going to come in. 95% of the people that they hire to work at the school, staff and faculty, are going to be white. All the white teachers and staff are going to do what? Buy houses, rent apartments, secure abandoned homes and lots, and they're going to turn all of these underdeveloped properties into regentrified dwellings. And all the black folks are like, okay, well, this is a good thing. My child's teacher lives next door. This is a good thing. All the teachers live in the neighborhood. I want to live in a neighborhood where the teachers live in the neighborhood. But they fail to realize that by all the white folks coming into that section of Las Vegas, they're going to raise the property value on purpose. They're going to push out all the Section 8 residents. They're going to push out all the non-homeowners. And then they're going to push out a lot of the homeowners because they're going to raise the property value and the tax that you won't be able to afford, especially our retired elders, and they're going to have to go packing. And within 5-10 years, that same school that you thought was for black kids is going to be 95% white because the black children and their families will no longer be able to afford to live in that neighborhood. The new face of gentrification is the charter school, which is why I'm telling black people, whenever someone comes in your neighborhood talking about they want to open up a charter school, do your research on who is really behind the charter school. 90% of the time, the person who is championing the charter school, the person who is marketing it to the community, the person who is advertising it to the neighborhood is not the person who is actually putting in the application to operate that charter. They are cleaning us in the name of cleaning us out in the name of education.
Yeah. I did find some of the research that I had been using talking about the closing of schools, and I'll make sure I forward this to you. But, yeah, it's happening all across the country, and it's happening as you're also seeing concurrently the moving out of these black urban enclaves. You know, for 60 years, Brother Umar,
yes,
black people
yes,
have occupied
yes,
within 10 minutes most of the times of the economic center of America's largest metropolitan areas. Black people have occupied prime real estate and the leadership has helped black people manage to turn those into desolate ghettos. So people want that land back, and they're moving blacks out to these Bantustans. You know that word from South Africa, which are economically bereft, where basically we're going to go to these Bantustans and breed ourselves out of existence over the next 60 years.
Exactly. Remember, Marcus Garvey said that a people who do not control their economic destiny sooner or later dies. They have to. And so the thing is we have to understand the importance of wealth. See, black people are all about cash and useless material things, but we're not about wealth. We have to start building and generating wealth, which is why it bothers me when I see these young children walking around with a $100 pair of sneakers, $90 pair of jeans, $150 coat, $200 watch, and not a dollar in the bank for a trust fund, no life insurance, no school fund. I mean, black people literally live for today and live for tomorrow. I often say one of the biggest differences in the financial mindset of blacks and others, one of the biggest differences in the financial mindset of blacks and others, Brother Keith, is that we will think about ourselves and our children's generation. That's it. Black people live for 2 generations, me and my kids. On the other side, European Jews, Anglo-Saxons, Arabs, and these Indians, they will be planning for their grandchildren's grandchildren. They are literally creating industry and wealth for 6 generations down the line. They want their great-great-great-grandchildren to see their picture on a wall one day and say, because he lived, I have. Because he lived, I am. Until black people get to that type of seriousness about our economic situation, nothing will change. But the reason they're closing the schools down, Kitty, is because public school was started to provide a better educated low-wage earner to the industries. School was forced on the government by capitalism. Capitalism said, listen, we will flounder if you don't give us somebody who can read, write, and count. That's what made education what it was in America, the need for capitalism to have a minimally basic skills educated slave laborer. Not for your child to go to college, not for them to own their business, but so that their labor could be exploited by capitalism. Well, guess what? NAFTA, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, all of the industrial infrastructure of America, I would say at least 50% of it has been moved out of the continent in the past 30 years. America no longer needs native labor. So if you don't need labor, you don't need the schools that provide the labor. So what is the purpose of public school in America for black kids who do not have a job waiting for them after they graduate? The purpose of education in the black community right here, right now, is to prepare black girls for poverty and to prepare black boys for prison. And if anyone dares dispute that, I would like to hear their argument. This is an education, Brother Keaty, for incarceration.
That's right. And with the now impending arrival of the fourth industrial wave, it's going to get even worse, as many people are now being replaced by artificial intelligence and robotics. We have another alternative. We have an entire continent to bring
an
up
entire
the
continent.
And as the African
entire continent.
one more point I want to make before we close today's conversation. Obviously, I'm going to have to bring you back much more often, Brother Umar, because you and I have wonderful conversations. But
anytime, my brother, anytime.
The last 8 years under the Obama administration has been we've been somewhat narcotized, if I could invent a word there. And now that Barack Obama is leaving the White House, he has pledged that his legacy is going to be on this program called My Brother's Keeper. In other words, it sounds like he wants to get black for his immediate future. Personally, I think it's strictly a money ploy, that he's going to be looking to make as much money as possible off the only kind of closed community that really still venerates and admires him, almost as if he were, quote-unquote, chocolate Jesus. Your thoughts on the reality of the Obama years, the Obama legacy, and the thought that he might now try and take the lead position on bettering the state for African Americans?
I could see President Obama, chocolate Jesus, potentially, post-administration, playing some sort of lobbyist role on behalf of the African American community as a way to placate the 8 years of neglect that he has delved our way. To me, personally, it's too little too late, because there's nothing that you can do post-administration that would even remotely come close to what you could have done while you sat in that seat. And let us be clear for the listening audience. We're not saying that Obama needed to be a president for black folks. We're not saying Obama could solve the problems of black folks. We're saying that there were certain key agenda items that were affecting black folks that we feel President Obama could have tackled, that all Americans agree upon are a problem. And I'll give you the three. One is education. Black, white, rich, poor, racist, or liberal. Everyone in America knows that the schools that serve black children are failing. Number two, black, white, rich, poor, liberal, or conservative, everyone walking in this country is aware that the 50% unemployment rate of black males is absolutely unacceptable. Number three, incarceration. Everyone knows that black men are deliberately targeted for incarceration, and that they suffer from a 97% recidivism rate, which means most of them are going to go back because there's no meaningful opportunities after they get out. I'm not saying he needed to tackle all three. If Obama would have chose one of them, say, listen, I can't do everything, but I can give y'all one thing. Then let me ride on one. If he would have took the schools, if he would have took the prisons, if he would have took unemployment and simply made a dent, not solve it, made a dent in that problem for us, I would have said, you know what, y'all? He didn't do much, but I got to at least respect him that he did do some justice in this area. He did none. And at the same time, Brother Keith, he went out of his way. His entire first term dedicated to the liberation and success of the LGBT community. They got 3 laws from Barack Obama. The last time black people got 3 laws from the federal government was the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, and that was in the 1860s. Homosexual community got 3 laws under Obama. A Supreme Court justice
250 federally appointed jobs. Immigrants got landmark legislation. White women got the Equal Pay Act. Obama took care of everyone through the law. And now you come with this nonsensical Brothers Keepers program, which is not a law. It does not fundamentally change the structure of American policy. You're simply throwing money at a black male problem. And when you look at this Brothers Keeper initiative, Brother Key, I don't see anything about putting the industrial building trades back into the high schools, which is what we need, because sending every black child to college isn't solving our problem. Number two, I don't see anything in it that deals with changing the school suspension and expulsion laws that is crippling education for black boys. Number three, I don't see anything about increasing the amount of black male principals and teachers that we have in the classroom instead of simply mitigating black men to the role of gym teachers and school police officers. Nothing that matters structurally was done by Barack Obama to affect the reality of black folks, and it is unacceptable given the fact he did so much for other minority groups.
Well, I guess you let us know what you really think about that, and I think you were right on point.
Black power.
That's right. Brother Umar, we're going to begin to wrap up this conversation, but before we go, and before you get your closing statement, I do want you to once again let people know where they can find you online, how they can maintain contact, perhaps book an event with you, as well as you had mentioned you're coming to Los Angeles on the 7th of January and to San Diego the weekend of 27, 28, and 29. How can people maintain contact and know more about your upcoming activities? And get your book?
Yes, sir. Definitely. The website is drumarjohnson.com, drumarjohnson.com. The email directly is drumarjohnson@yahoo, just like the website. You just add Yahoo, drumarjohnson@yahoo.com. Phone number is 844-4-DRUMAR. So that's 844-4 Dr. Umar. You can reach me that way by telephone. If you're on Instagram and Twitter, you can follow me at Dr. Umar Johnson. And if you are on Facebook, you can follow me at Dr. Umar Ifatunde. I use my Yoruba name on Facebook, and that's spelled Ifatunde. Again, Dr. Umar Ifatunde on Facebook, Ifatunde. Quick rundown: Baltimore on the 26th, Jacksonville, Florida on the 28th, Detroit, Michigan, December the 30th, Atlanta, Georgia, January the 1st, Los Angeles, California, January the 7th, Durham, North Carolina, January the 17th, Brooklyn, New York. I'll be keynoting the Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad celebration. That's Thursday, January the 12th, and then San Diego, California for the most important National Independent Black Parent Association Conference, January 27th and 28th, with the Power Lecture on Sunday, January 29th. Tickets at princeofpanafricanism.eventbrite.com. If you need the flyer, you can email me for the flyer. You can also text me for the flyer at area code 215-989-9858, 215-989-9858. Also, Brother Keedy, real quickly, want parents to know that the sign-up for the second annual Black College in Consciousness Tour, last year we started in New York City, we did Virginia, Pennsylvania, Maryland, D.C., New York. Now we're going to do Atlanta, we're going to do Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama, North Carolina, South Carolina, 14 days and 14 nights from June 28th to July the 14th, July the 12th, excuse me. Parents will be able to register beginning in the new year. Also, I'm working on my 4th annual trip to Africa, 2 weeks, 14 days, the last week of July, first week of August. I should have that information soon. As well, and very last thing, every Tuesday morning, I want your parents to know that I host the free Black Parent Teleconference. Any questions about black child education or mental health? Any questions about black child education or mental health, you can call me for free, 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time every Tuesday, and the number is 857-0158. Again, 857-232-0158, and the access code for the parent conference is 870-864-POUND, 870-864-POUND, and I'll be sure to send the flyers to Brother Keaty so he can post them up.
All right. Take 30 seconds, wrap it up, and leave the people something to inspire them to put some action in their plans.
Yes, sir. A quote from Frederick Douglass and a quote from Marcus Garvey. Mr. Garvey said, without confidence in self, you are twice defeated in the race of life. But with confidence, you have won even before you have started. Frederick Douglass, without struggle, there is no progress. For 20 years, I prayed on my knees to God for freedom. But the good Lord gave me no freedom until I got up off my knees and started praying with my feet.
Thank you, Brother Umar. We always appreciate your voice here on your LIB radio family. I'll talk to you a little bit later in the week. I know you're going to be really busy. And make sure you get your copy of my new book I'm really proud of. And
Can't wait to read it. Can't wait to read it.
Yeah, let's do this again, maybe quarterly or so. I think
your
voice needs to be much more prominent on LIB radio. I appreciate you, brother.
Thank you, Brother
Stay
Keaty.
safe in all your practices. And whatever you do, wherever you go, don't eat what Americans eat, and you're going to be all right.
No doubt. I'm going to get you to help me with that. I appreciate it.
I got your back, Lion. Next, when you come to Las
brother.
Vegas, we had a wonderful special meal that I was asked to prepare for Baba Kaba Kamene, Hiawatha Kamene, and we're going to make sure we do that for you as well. You're going to eat raw superfood gourmet compliments of your brother Chef Keaty when you make it to this town.
Thank you,
and on
my
that
brother.
note, everybody, that's how we do it on LIB Radio. Our guest, Brother Dr. Umar Johnson, you know how to contact him, and you know why you need to contact him. So let's get on the task. It is not a time for us to be power